During the African and colonial struggles, many African political and cultural groups were formed in Africa to fight and reclaim back their rightful independence that had been taken by these tyrannical forces of Europeans. In Uganda, such groups or cultural groups were present, notably the Nyabingi movement led by a fierce woman called Muhumuza. It was amongst the earliest groups, cultural groups, that were formed to fight the colonial rule in Uganda or in Africa. Although that women have also contributed to the anti-colonial struggles in Africa, their efforts go unnoticed, and many Ugandans or East Africans or Africans are not aware of fierce people like Muhumuza and the Nyabingi movements. Today, we are going to unearth the myths and the legends of who was Muhumuza and what was the purpose of the Nyabingi movement. Tradition has it that Nyabingi was the queen of Karagwe, a kingdom northwest of Tanzania, around the 1700s. She later got married to the chief of Mporo named Ruhinda, who was passing through her kingdom from a military expedition. Ruhinda broke all the norms, the traditional norms, and stayed in her kingdom as a prince consort. Ruhinda got tired of his inferior position in the kingdom eventually and overthrew his queen, got her killed, and took over the kingdom himself. The spirit of Nyabingi, through her followers, carried out revenge on both the murderers and on those of her incisive subjects who had allowed Ruhinda to rule the kingdom, including the annexation of Ndorwa region by the Mwami or the King of Rwanda. Ndorwa region, present-day Nyagatare, Gichumbi, Gatsibo in Rwanda, and Kabare, Kisoro in Uganda. The spirit of Nyabingi then appeared in Chisaka, Rwanda. This new personification of Nyabingi attracted tributes from the locals, but was later killed by Mwami Rwagera of Rwanda, seeking to negate any other famous or potentially powerful forces in his own kingdom. Around the 1840s, another personification of Nyabingi appeared, again in Rwanda. This spirit possession was through Kahaya's daughter, one of Mwami's vessel chiefs. Kahaya's daughter Kanzanara was subsequently killed on her own father's orders, and her spirit ostensibly reincarnated in a woman called Rutagira Kijuna or Rutagira Muhandi. Rutagira Kijuna's personification of Nyabingi almost turned her into the ruler of Ndorwa region. She toured the whole country, receiving salutations of Kasinje, a greeting only due to royalty. But she was also killed by the then king of Rwanda, Kigeli Rwabugiri IV, seeking to negate any other potential forces in his own kingdom. It is believed that the Nyabingi cult started as a religious movement, with its main agenda being providing sanctuary to the vulnerable groups, such as widows and those women that had been affected by the patriarchal practices which were rampant at the time. For over 2 centuries, the Nyabingi cult had gained momentum and recognition. It extended to Rwanda, Burundi, Tanganyika, Congo, Mporo, Nkore, and beyond. With colonialism, peasants mobilized under Nyabingi cult into armed resistance for over 2 decades, especially amongst the peasant Bachiga community as a religion of the oppressed and disadvantaged. It is this spiritual movement that Muhumuza, the wife of King Rwabugiri Kigeli IV, found herself in as an exile in Uganda. Muhumuza also known as Muserekande, was the wife of Kigeli IV Rwabugiri, the king of Rwanda. In 1895, after the death of her husband, she fled with her son Biregeya to live among us the Bachiga of southern Uganda after her husband's successor was assassinated by his other stepmother, Kajongera, who at the time was backed by the colonial powers, installed her own son, Musinga, on the throne as a puppet king. Initially, due to the fact that Muhumuza and her son were former royalty, both of them were not received well by the peasants of Ndorwa, where most of the inhabitants were the subject Bahutu. Here, the area was not very favorable for cattle, and as such, there were very few Batusi in Ndorwa. The Mwami's authority here was almost non-existent. The area was an outlaw territory of political dissidents and runaways fleeing the Mwami's authority. While living amongst the Bachiga with her son, Muhumuza was exposed to the sect of Nyabingi. Nyabingi was said to continue to manifest herself within women in the region, who after going through secretive training and inductions would become priestesses or Abajirwa, with most of their daughters being introduced to the system from an early age. These Abajirwa wielded exceptional power in the region, even to the point of being paid tribute by major chiefs, an act known as Oktwija. Muhumuza, also known for her natural leadership, was eventually initiated and was said to be chosen by Nyabingi as her next medium, gaining her a huge following in the region. As a Nyabingi medium, she was believed to possess spiritual powers that could heal the sick, revive the fertility of the barren, and give fortune. The movement was, however, transformed into a political movement to avert the discriminatory practices often practiced on by colonial powers against the local community in Kigezi. For instance, the people of Kigezi, in addition to facing gender discrimination, were exposed to British-appointed ruthless local chiefs whose tasks were to enforce colonial exploitation. For the next few years, Muhumuza led the Nyabingi spiritual movement, clashing with the Europeans and their allies, launching a series of attacks, the last of which was fought in 1911. She inspired the war and colonial struggle in Rwanda and Uganda. In 1911, a surprise colonial attack under Captain Reid, who commanded a contingent of King's African Rifles and local levies, led to a 6-hour battle. About 40 of Muhumuza's allies were killed. The arrest caused complications because the area had not yet been formally incorporated into the Ugandan Protectorate. Therefore, the Kigezi administration had no power to try Muhumuza. Muhumuza was imprisoned and kept under house arrest in Mengo, Kampala, where she later died in 1945. But her famous words, "The bullets of the Bazungu will turn water against me," were echoed, and her arrest had just marked the beginning of a long line of powerful warrior priestesses who fought colonial dominations in Uganda, Rwanda, and the Congo. In 1912, the Witchcraft Ordinance in Uganda was passed. In response to these spiritual political movements that was against the colonial rule. Though eventually overpowered by the foreign and local armies, the battle continued well into the 1930s and in the name of Nyabingi's spirit and the freedom she represented. It was during that time, around the 1930s, that saw the rise of the Rastafarian movement in Jamaica. They were inspired by the spirit, the zeal, as presented by Muhumuza and the Nyabingi movement in the anti-colonial struggles of Africa. As of now, The Nyabingi house in the Rastafarian movement is amongst the biggest and oldest house in the Rastafarian movement. The Nyabingi movement was amongst the first African groups that opposed the administration of the white man in Africa, having to fight the British in Uganda, the Belgians in Rwanda, and the Germans in Tanzania. Gender played a big role in the terms of expectations, socialization, and power relations. For instance, despite the existence of patriarchal practices at the time, Muhumuza, who was a fearless leader, managed to mobilize the followers against the colonial powers in the name of Nyabingi spirit. Irrespective of some doubts about the reality of the existence of such powers, her actions were able to shape women's identity by demonstrating that women can be leaders in male-dominated fields, even in armed forces. Presently, Nyabingi is a well-known spirit in Uganda, the north of Tanzania, and Rwanda. Thank you for your time. Please follow, please share, and if you are interested in such stories, many more stories, please send me an email on this email below, and I'll be able to deliver. Thank you for your time. Let's catch up in the next episode.